Trial resumed. Jury not present.
The court said, "Good morning."
All counsel said, "Good morning, Your Honor."
The court said, "Would you make your appearances, please?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Good morning, Your Honor." Ryan Finkel and Justin Horton for the government. We're joined by Isabel Loftus, a paralegal specialist with our office. Juliana Murray and Micah Ferguson will be joining us shortly.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Good morning, Your Honor." On behalf of Mr. Kwok, Sabrina Shroff, Sid Kumraju, Scott Skirick, and Matt Barkin. Also present at counsel table is Mr. Salazar.
The court said, "Please be seated. Is there anything before we get started at 9:30?
Ms. Shrofa said, "Not from the defense, Your Honor."
Mr. Finkel said, "Not so much of an issue from the government. I just want to update the court on scheduling. If the court would like."
The court said, "Okay."
Mr. Finkel said, "So the government, assuming we can get a certain document in today, we believe we'll hopefully be able to rest tomorrow, if tomorrow is a full day. If tomorrow is not a full day, I'm not sure. We have, I would say, 2 medium-length witnesses today and 2 short witnesses today. That's our plan. I'm not sure what the cross is going to be on the medium-length witnesses. If it's consistent with some other crosses, we might not even be able to get those through today. We received the defense's witness list over the weekend, which we appreciate that they provided. There are 11 witnesses on the witness list, possibly 12. We might stip on 1 witness. The defense estimates that they can complete those 12 witnesses, or 11 witnesses assuming the stip, by July 3rd is my understanding. That does not seem realistic to the government, particularly if those days are half days. A lot of the witnesses, of the witnesses, 3 of them are experts, which are going to take some time. There are a number of witnesses who, some of them, we don't really know what their testimony is going to be because there's no 26.2 material for those witnesses. We can guess, and I think it's basically they'll sort of put in Gua's life story and other issues. I don't know. But in any event, when we've done the 9:30 to 2:45 days, on average we've done about 2 witnesses a day. Some days we've done 3, some days we've done 1. At that 2 witness a day clip, we're very easily into the end of July at this point, and that's assuming the defendant doesn't testify. And if the defendant testifies, which of course he is entitled to do, and is entirely his right if he chooses to, I imagine such testimony will take days. He's going to have to explain, I imagine, all the videos, the recordings, all the statements, the businesses, the investments. It's going to take a lot of time, and so is the cross. So the way the government is looking at this is, we certainly defer to the court on what makes the most sense in terms of scheduling. But if the goal is to complete this trial all in by July 12th, it does not seem feasible to the government to continue to sit just until 2:45. And maybe it's extending just a little bit each day or on certain days. But the government does believe we need to extend the days to make sure we get all this in. And at a minimum, we would ask Your Honor to at least let the jury know that the week of July 8th, that sort of last week, would be a full day, because assuming things go as the defense anticipates, and the government certainly hopes, it would seem to the government that week would be jury addresses and deliberations, which I assume the court, and maybe I'm wrong to assume this, but I assume the court would want to sit until 5 for those events. So sort of the bottom line, Your Honor, coming back full circle, is, given what we understand the defense case is going to be, we believe that the court should consider sitting longer days to make sure we meet the end of the trial by July 12th. Which is what the court predicted for the jury, and what the parties had assumed would be the case.
Mr. Kumraju said, "Thank you, Your Honor. And good morning." So what I would propose is, I think I heard Mr. Finkel say that the government would like to discuss with the court and the parties the idea of possibly extending certain days. You know, maybe some a little bit, maybe some a little bit more. I think it might be productive for us to have a conversation with the government. Because we're not opposed to doing some modification of the schedule to make sure that we complete the trial in a timely fashion. I don't know that the defense believes that that's necessary to sit full 9 to 5 days every day. And our witnesses. While there are 11 of them, some of them are. I anticipate, particularly in light of Your Honor's recent ruling, some of them may be under 30 minutes. And our experts. It's hard for me to envision any of their direct examinations being more than 60 to 90 minutes. So I think we'd be well on track, but I think what we would propose is to have that discussion with the government. See if we can arrive at something mutual that we all believe can get this trial done in the right time. Propose it to Your Honor for Your Honor's consideration, and, if Your Honor agrees, then propose that to the jury. That would be my proposal.
Mr. Finkel said, "So, Your Honor. Certainly happy to speak with defense counsel more about this, and try to reach an agreement. I would just ask 2 things. 1, I'm not sure. But, a number of the defense witnesses will require a translator, which will extend matters. If there are 3 experts, who are 60 to 90 minutes, let's assume that it's 75 minutes on average. Let's say it's a half hour of cross. That itself is 2 days. So if they think they're going to put their entire 11 witnesses in 4 days, it just doesn't seem feasible. Candidly. And I wish it was. I hope it moves quickly. I really do. The second point, Your Honor, is we would ask that tomorrow, to the extent it works for Your Honor and for the jury, that we would extend the day until either we complete our witnesses for the day or 5 o'clock, whichever happens sooner. There is 1 witness, if we need them, and hopefully we won't. But if there's 1 witness we need for custodial purpose, that would have to be on Wednesday. That person is not available until Wednesday morning. But anyway, that's sort of where we are. But I very much accept the invitation to have a discussion with defense counsel, and would ask Your Honor to consider sitting tomorrow later."
Mr. Kumraju said, and just on the cross-examination point, Your Honor. We have been working to try to make them more efficient. We'll continue to do that. I'll just give Your Honor an example. On Friday, I believe Special Agent Luciano testified on direct for 107 minutes. And I believe Ms. Schroff's cross-examination was 26 minutes. Which is about the same length of time that Special Agent Luciano testified about photographs. About towels and slippers, and lead paint disclaimers in the contract. So we are working to try to make our crosses more efficient. I assume the government will do the same. We are looking at our witness list. We're trying to stipulate to certain things with the government to try to even shorten that list even further. But candidly, our witnesses are not of the same length that the government's are. We don't have 3, or 4, or 5-hour witnesses that impact the average that Mr. Finkel was talking about. So again, I propose that we speak with the government. Maybe we can come up with a resolution that avoids Your Honor having to resolve a dispute. But that would be my proposal.
The court said, "So what I think that I would like to do is ask them to stay late on Tuesday and Wednesday. I cannot stay late on Thursday, and so I will ask that question when they come out this morning. If there's anybody who absolutely cannot stay late on Wednesday and Thursday, in the meantime, you will have your discussion. Of course I wish that you had had this discussion during the break. But I urge you to talk to each other. Anything else?"
Mr. Ferguson said, "Yes, Your Honor. Just a couple points to try and streamline the examination of the bankruptcy witness. Mr. Douglas Skalka. He is a local counsel in Connecticut to the bankruptcy trustee. In his direct examination, we are trying to hew very closely to the narrow presentation of particularly probative, relevant evidence from the bankruptcy As we laid out in our motions in limine and as the court ordered we were permitted to do. We hope that it will be an efficient presentation. And, the first point, Your Honor, is just that by calling someone related to the bankruptcy, it doesn't mean that cross-examination is now a trial within a trial about the separate bankruptcy case. It should be focused, of course, on what was elicited in the direct examination. That's just one point. And hopefully, to Mr. Kamraju's point, the defense is, doing focused cross-examinations now as well. There are two other points to raise, Your Honor, just about evidentiary disputes, as I understand them to be disputes. The first relates to the custodial witness we may need to call on Wednesday. One of the pieces of evidence we were hoping to just include in Mr. Skalka's testimony about the bankruptcy relates to transcripts from what are called 341 meetings of creditors. As I understand it, in a bankruptcy proceeding, the debtor has to testify at a proceeding that is sort of organized and administered by the DOJ's Office of the Trustee. It's a component of the Department of Justice that sort of helps facilitate bankruptcy proceedings. I'm not an expert in that, but that is my understanding. They hold these meetings, they record them. They get transcribed.
The court said, is it sworn? Are the statements sworn?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes. And Mr. Skalka was not present at those meetings. But we were still hoping to offer selected excerpts of the defendant's testimony at that through Mr. Skalka, since he is sort of our bankruptcy witness for this type of evidence. He wasn't present at these meetings, however. We understand that the defense is going to object on authenticity grounds to offering these transcripts. Now, as Mr. Finkel indicated, we can call the attorney from the Office of the Trustee, who is in New Haven. She has court on Tuesdays. Rather than trying to disrupt the court in New Haven's schedule, she could be available Wednesday morning to come and say, yes, this was a recording, this is the testimony. Here's the transcript. And that would be the extent of it. We're not really sure why that would be necessary to do that. We're hoping it would be efficient to just offer them through Mr. Skalka. But that's ultimately up to the defense, I guess. What Mr. Skalka can say is that, as local counsel in the bankruptcy proceedings, he received these transcripts, he's used them in filings, they've been relied on in court. But like I noted, he wasn't present at the meeting itself. The second issue, Your Honor, relates to, and I'm not sure if we want defense counsel to address the first and then I can raise the second.
The court said yes. I'd like to hear from the defense on that issue of the transcripts.
Mr. Kamraju said, yes, Your Honor. All we're asking for is for the government to authenticate documents in the way that the law requires. We are happy to talk to them about potential stipulations, as we have already. And even in the context of this document. But I don't think it is asking too much for the government to introduce evidence through witnesses who can properly authenticate it. We've had that issue before, during this trial. And that's it. This witness, I think Mr. Ferguson essentially conceded, does not have personal knowledge to authenticate that. And as defense counsel, it's hard for me to see how I can just automatically stipulate to something that the government doesn't have a basis for the witness to put in. So Mr. Skalka, I don't believe, is coming up first, so if they'd like to continue that discussion, I'm happy to. But it's pretty clear this witness does not have the ability to authenticate these transcripts.
The court said, but your client certainly would know what he said, right? In other words, you could stipulate, based upon your client's representation to you, that these were his words.
Mr. Kamraju said, well, they're in English, Your Honor, first of all, so.
The court said, well, of course they could be translated.
Mr. Kamraju said, they could be, Your Honor, but I'm not sure how that, let me put it this way. My client could tell me if he recalls, during the course of this interview, giving these answers in connection with these questions. I don't know that he'll be able to do that. But even if he was able to do that, I'm not sure that obviates the government's requirement to authenticate the documents.
The court said, it's not a question of whether it obviates the government's obligation. It's a question as to whether or not you'll stipulate. It's your call, of course. You make your decisions as to how to best represent your client. And so if there is no stipulation, then that witness will have to be called. What is the second issue?
Mr. Ferguson said, the second issue, Your Honor, is. Part of the testimony relates to this $37 million transfer from the Himalaya Exchange's bank accounts to the bankruptcy attorney that was representing Mei Gua, Mr. Gua's daughter, who claimed to be the owner of the yacht, the Lady May. One of the main disputes that sort of led to the bankruptcy related to the Lady May, Your Honor. And there was a $37 million loan from the Himalaya Exchange entities to Mei Gua that was then put in escrow, because the yacht had been moved outside the jurisdiction of the United States. It relates to a draft loan agreement related to that. So the executed loan agreement is filed on the docket, filed by both parties in the bankruptcy. Mr. Skalka is going to introduce that document. There was sort of a global agreement related to this $37 million escrow early on in the bankruptcy. There's also an initial draft of that loan agreement where the lender was not the Himalaya Exchange entity but ACA Capital Group, which, Your Honor may recall, is the entity that had the bank account in Abu Dhabi that the government alleges basically used a money laundering slush fund to cycle fraud proceeds into and then back out of? Back into the United States. That draft loan agreement was produced in discovery by the attorneys for the entity that is the borrower, basically the shell company that Mei Gua was the listed owner of. And Mr. Skalka, it was produced in discovery to the trustee. Mr. Skalka has access to that discovery. It's Bates stamped with that entity's name. He's going to identify that as a draft loan produced in discovery. We're going to offer it. We understand the defense is going to object to that. I just wanted to raise it so maybe we can handle it now rather than at a sidebar during the jury's time.
The court said, so your witness would merely be stating that this is a document that he received. He doesn't have any personal connection to the document.
Mr. Ferguson said, correct, Your Honor. It's a draft loan agreement between the final executed version that's filed on the docket by both parties in connection with the bankruptcy proceeding. This is just a draft version of it that was produced by that party in discovery to the trustee.
The court said, so are you saying that the final document is something that we have a stipulation on?
Mr. Ferguson said, no, Your Honor.
The court said no.
Mr. Ferguson said, I don't think they're objecting to the final.
The court said, they're not objecting to the final. They're objecting to the.
Mr. Ferguson said, I'm not certain. That was maybe I'm assuming. I thought it was the draft.
Mr. Kumraju said, Your Honor, I can clear that up. We won't object to the final coming in.
The court said, but you do object to the draft.
Mr. Kumraju said, we had objected to the draft, Your Honor. Frankly, I was curious about what the basis for authentication was that Mr. Ferguson was going to address for the draft.
The court said, well, it's the problem of authentication that he's raising.
Mr. Kumraju said, right. I raised the problem of authentication because I don't think it comports with Your Honor's prior ruling. For example, we dealt with this issue with the G Club documents in Ms. Reyes's testimony, and the government offered them. Said that Ms. Reyes could authenticate them on the basis of her recognizing the signatures and recognizing those documents as being sort of the packet that G Clubs had typically used. So because she had sort of inside knowledge, right, because she worked there. Mr. Skalka doesn't have that. I think, Your Honor, that if I have a discussion with Mr. Ferguson, we may be able to resolve this issue as well.
The court said, I hope so. So you'll talk to each other and we'll start at 9:30.
Mr. Kumraju said, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
Recess.
The court said, would you have the jurors brought in?
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Good morning, jurors.
The juror said, good morning.
The court said, welcome back. Due to circumstances beyond my control and the control of the parties, it looks like we're going to need some extra time. Otherwise, I don't think we'll be able to finish by July 12th. And so I would like you to stay until 5 tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So today we stop at 2:45. Tomorrow you'd be staying until 5, Wednesday until 5, Thursday until 2:45, and Friday off. Is there anyone who absolutely cannot do that? If you would just state your number.
Juror said, 10.
The court said, and what is it that you're not able to?
Juror said, I can't on Wednesday. I have.
The court said, I can't hear you.
Juror said, I can't on Wednesday.
The court said, but tomorrow you can. Okay.
Juror said, I can't on Wednesday either.
The court said, so we will not be in session until 5 on Wednesday. Alrighty. So let's continue with the examination of the witness.
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor. The government calls Amy Buck.
The court said, alrighty.
Witness sworn.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Amy Buck Faundes. AMYBUCK FAUNDEZ.
The court said, you may inquire.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
Amy Buck Faundes, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Ferguson.
Good morning, Ms. Buck.
Good morning.
Where do you live?
New Jersey.
What do you do for work?
I'm a real estate attorney.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if we could please publish Government Exhibit Z12 at page 19. Ms. Buck, have you ever seen this before?
I have not.
Focusing you on the bottom right, can you read the text in the bottom right box?
Buck ESQ LLC, Attorney Trust Account.
What's the name of your LLC?
Buck ESQ LLC.
Were you involved in the purchase of the property at 675 Ramapo Valley Road in Mahwah, New Jersey?
Yes.
What's the name you referred to that property as?
Crocker Mansion.
And what was your role in the purchase?
Ms. Strofa said, may I have the exhibit taken down if it's not being used?
Mr. Ferguson said, that's fine, Your Honor. We can take it down.
The court said, okay.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Buck. What was your role in the purchase of the Crocker Mansion?
I represented the purchaser in the transaction.
After the purchase, did you continue to perform work in connection with the Crocker Mansion?
I did.
And at a high level, what did you do?
I paid invoices to various contractors and vendors in relation to the property.
Now, Ms. Buck, in whose name was title to the Crocker Mansion held?
Taurus Fund LLC.
And based on your work with the Crocker Mansion, who did you understand to own the Crocker Mansion as a practical matter?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, you may answer.
A family.
Do you know the name of the family?
I do not.
Did you ever meet them?
I did not.
All right. Now, Ms. Buck, let's back up. How do you typically get business in your real estate practice?
Through word of mouth and referrals.
Was the Crocker Mansion a referral?
Yes.
And approximately when was it referred to you?
The beginning of December of 2021.
And who referred it?
Aaron Mitchell.
And in your initial conversation, did you speak with Aaron Mitchell or someone else?
I spoke with his wife Dara.
And what's her last name?
Lawall, Lawall. I believe that's the name she practices under. I'm not certain.
And what's her occupation?
She's an attorney with her husband.
Now, in that initial conversation, what did you discuss with Ms. Lawall?
She called me.
Ms. Strofa said, objection to hearsay.
Mr. Ferguson said, it's an agent.
The court said, you can testify as to the nature of the discussion.
The witness said, okay.
She reached out to refer this particular matter to me. She told me the clients were like family to her and they were very important to them. And she also wanted to inquire about my ability to do an accelerated transaction. It was a quick cash transaction.
And Ms. Buck, was it your understanding she represented this family?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, so the witness can testify about the subject matter but not about actual words stated by the individual.
Mr. Ferguson said, we may need a brief sidebar, Your Honor.
The court said, okay.
At the sidebar,
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Lowell is the wife of Aaron Mitchell. They have a law firm together, Lowell and Mitchell. It's a law firm that represents the defendant. They acted as his agent in the purchase of this New Jersey property. And so,
The court said, the nature of the agency?
Mr. Ferguson said, is the attorney's relationship.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Ferguson said, and so I think she can testify to what she was told by the agents of the defendant.
Ms. Schrofa said, she's not an agent of Mr. Govt. She's a lawyer who practices law. He's somebody she's married to. But she's a separate lawyer. I mean, women do get married and still maintain a very separate professional existence. She does not have an attorney-client relationship and she's not acting as the agent.
The court said, is there an attorney-client relationship with Mr. Govt?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes. That's what she will testify to. Ms. Lowell, the testimony will be that they have a very important client to them, it's a family. They're looking for someone to help quickly close on this property in Mawa. That's perfectly permissible for her to explain what she was told about the representation by the attorney for the defendant and his family.
The court said, in addition to that, can you just give me a feel for what else you're going to elicit?
Mr. Ferguson said, yeah, of course. So that's the initial conversation. After this initial conversation with Ms. Lowell, she accepts the referral, and then thereafter, her primary point of contact is Aaron Mitchell, Ms. Lowell's husband. Also the attorney of the defendant of the same law firm that, the husband and wife's shop. And thereafter, he's the point of contact, the representative, of Taurus Fund and the family. And she deals with him and with others such as Scott Barnett, the defendant's primary bodyguard, Gladys Chow. The defendant's translator, Sean Jing, another of the defendant's personal assistants. And she has communications with them about the closing on the property and then also payment of invoices for renovations for the family on the property. Purchasing furnishings for the property, various other works that they used to trace back to investor money that was sent to Crane and sent to Hamilton and then to Ms. Buck. That's, in essence, her testimony.
The court said, short witness then.
Mr. Ferguson said, that's what I'm hoping, Your Honor.
The court said, all right. I'm going to allow the testimony.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I just wanted to make sure it's noted. We have no objection to Aaron Mitchell and the remaining people. The government's argument here is designed to sort of obfuscate the issue. The person I'm objecting to the hearsay coming in is conversations with Ms. Lowell, who does not represent the Govt family, has not had any attorney-client relationship. And that is the narrow scope of my objection. Mr. Ferguson here went off as to all of the other people, who, arguably, they've already identified as agents or, quote-unquote, co-conspirators, but not this woman. So my objection is narrow. Just to this woman's hearsay interactions with this lawyer.
The court said, but I understand him to say that she had these dealings with the Govt entity.
Ms. Schrofa said, there is no such evidence. There is only evidence of a referral. We have no, I'm not finished, sir.
Mr. Ferguson said, if I may respond. The court is looking at me.
The court said, one moment.
Mr. Ferguson said, you're correct.
The court said, so I'm allowing the testimony.
Ms. Schrofa said, where is the relationship between her and the Govt family?
The court said, so he seeks to elicit that testimony, and I'm relying on his representation as an officer of the court. Let's go.
In open court,
The court said, you may continue.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
by Mr. Ferguson.
Ms. Buck, what did Ms. Lowell tell you about her client in that conversation?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
What, if anything, did Ms. Lowell tell you about her client?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
In that conversation?
Ms. Strofa said, objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
The court said, you'll establish the relationship first.
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, it's just what she was told. Whom? Answer.
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, this is a conversation between whom and.
Mr. Ferguson said, between Ms. Buck and Ms. Lowell.
The court said, okay. Yes, you may continue. You may.
She told me that they were clients of theirs for a long time and they were like family to them.
Did she tell you the client's name?
She did not.
Did you understand?
The court said, and just for the benefit of the jury, Ms. Buck is who? You're Ms. Buck.
The witness said, me.
The court said, okay. I just want to make sure that we know all the parties. Go ahead.
Mr. Ferguson said, understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
By Mr. Ferguson.
All right. And did you and Ms. Lowell discuss your fees?
We did.
And what were your fees?
$2,000.
Did you accept the referral from Ms. Lowell?
I did.
After you spoke with Ms. Lowell, who was your primary contact for the Crocker Mansion deal?
Aaron Mitchell.
And what did Aaron Mitchell say his role was?
He was the authorized representative for the Taurus Fund.
And did Aaron Mitchell tell you the name of the family he represented?
He did not.
Ms. Strofa said, objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
The court said, you may answer.
He did not.
And Ms. Buck, you can adjust the microphone. If you could pull it close to you. And you could point it right at your mouth. It will be easier to hear you.
There we go. Better?
Much better. Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. May I approach, Your Honor?
The court said, you may.
All right. Ms. Buck, what did I just hand you?
The witness binder.
And have you reviewed the government exhibits in that binder previously?
I have.
Does it contain documents you and your company provided to the government from your work?
Ms. Strofa said, objection to leading.
The court said, you may answer.
From your work at Crocker Mansion?
Yes.
Does it contain invoices and other records related to payments you made on behalf of Taurus Fund?
Yes.
Is it fair to say Buck ESQ LLC regularly maintains such records as part of its business?
Yes.
Does it also contain communications with agents of Taurus Fund?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. The government offers the exhibits in the binder. These are all in the GX Buck, BUCK series. These are government exhibits 34, 44, 48, 49, 50, 60, 63, 69, 77, 80, 115, 117, 127, 131, 133, 138, 141, 168, 174, 194, 218, 221, 227, 232, 235, 236, 241, 243, 375, 391, 428, 522, 524, 532, 709, 822, 851, 1204, 1260, 1261. And then 1274 through 1291, and 1293 through 1296. And the government offers those exhibits.
Ms. Strofa said, we're not going to massively agree to the admission of these exhibits. Your Honor, I don't have an authentication issue, but to the extent that we have hearsay and other objections, we maintain them.
The court said, all righty. They are admitted.
Government's exhibits Buck 34, Buck 44, Buck 48, Buck 49, Buck 50, Buck 60, Buck 63, Buck 69, Buck 77, Buck 80 received in evidence. Government's exhibits Buck 115, Buck 117, Buck 127, Buck 131, Buck 133, Buck 138, Buck 141, Buck 168, Buck 174, Buck 194 received in evidence. Government's exhibits Buck 218, Buck 221, Buck 227, Buck 232, Buck 235, Buck 236, Buck 241, Buck 243 received in evidence. Government's exhibits Buck 375, Buck 391, Buck 428, Buck 522, Buck 524, Buck 532 received in evidence. Government's exhibits Buck 709, Buck 822, Buck 851, Buck 1204, Buck 1260, Buck 1261, and Buck 1274 Buck 1291, and Buck 1293 Buck 1296 received in evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could also show the witness what's marked as GX Buck 1292. Just the witness. And if you could scroll up briefly just so she can see it.
By Mr. Ferguson.
What kind of document is this, Ms. Buck?
This is an Excel spreadsheet of the payments made.
And did you create this Excel spreadsheet?
I did.
Was that part of your work on behalf of Buck ESQ LLC for the Taurus Fund?
Yes.
And is this another business record for Buck ESQ LLC?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, the government offers Government Exhibit 1292.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, may I just have a brief voir dire?
The court said yes.
Voir dire examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Ms. Buck, when was this document created?
I don't remember the exact date, but from the beginning, I started this Excel spreadsheet. When I started making payments.
And you maintained the Excel sheet throughout the course of your representation?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, Okay. I have no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit Buck 1292 received in evidence.
The court said, would you please repeat the number of the exhibit?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor. This is 1292. It's GX Buck 1292.
The court said, okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor. All right. We can take that down, Ms. Loftus.
By Mr. Ferguson.
All right. Now, Ms. Buck, after you accepted the referral for Crocker Mansion, what, if anything, did you do to formalize the engagement?
I drafted an engagement letter.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could show what's now in evidence as GX Buck 1296. All right. And what's this document?
This is the engagement letter I drafted for this transaction.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. And if we could scroll down. All right. And who signed on behalf of Taurus Fund?
Aaron Mitchell.
And what did he write in the signature line?
He wrote attorney in fact.
And what's an attorney in fact?
It's similar to like a power of attorney. He has the authorization to sign on behalf of an entity.
The court said, and what is an engagement letter?
The witness said, an engagement letter is something that attorneys use, or I use in my real estate business when I'm representing either a buyer or a seller, to formalize the engagement and to give the client information on the price and if any variables come up in the representation.
The court said, what do you mean by engagement?
The witness said, they hire me to represent them.
The court said, go ahead.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor. All right. And we can take that down, Ms. Loftus.
By Mr. Ferguson.
After accepting or after the engagement letter, Ms. Buck, what did you do next?
I called the title company.
What was the name of the title company?
Insight Title Agency.
And what was their role in the purchase?
They provided the title commitment and policy and they were the settlement agent. So they handled the funds for the transaction.
What's a settlement agent?
A settlement agent is typically a title company. In New Jersey, that's how we do the transactions. They receive the deposit, the buyer's funds, they receive funds from possibly a lender if one's involved. And then they disperse the funds in accordance with the closing statement.
And after the title company and the engagement letter, what did you do next?
I asked for a copy of the contract.
What was the contract price?
$26 million.
And what were the terms of payment for the $26 million?
It was a $2 million deposit. The balance was due at closing. There was no mortgage contingency.
And when you say no mortgage contingency, what does that mean to a layperson?
It's a cash deal. All the money is coming from the buyer.
And who was the buyer listed on the contract?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Taurus Fund SP.
What is SP?
I'm not really sure.
To your knowledge, could an SP hold title to this property?
No. I spoke to the title company about it. And it's not a recognized entity for title purposes in New Jersey.
What, if anything, did Aaron Mitchell tell you about Taurus Fund SP?
He said they were going to form an LLC at closing.
And what entity ultimately held title to the property?
Taurus Fund, LLC.
And how was Taurus Fund, LLC structured?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection.
The court said, well, if you know.
The witness said, I do.
The court said, go ahead.
It was formed in the state of Nevada. And it was 100% member, the 100% member was Taurus Fund. I'll start over. It was formed in Nevada. The sole member was Taurus Management, LLC.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Ms. Loftus, if we can show the witness what's in evidence as GX Buck 1234. All right. And what's this exhibit, Ms. Buck?
This is a filed Articles of Organization for Taurus Fund, LLC.
In what state?
Nevada.
And just to focus you sort of towards the top middle, when was it incorporated?
December 16, 2021.
And how close was that to the closing date for the Crocker Mansion?
I believe we closed the next day, on December 17th.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could scroll down to page 3, Ms. Loftus. And if we could zoom on the bottom half. Just to make it larger. Who were the managers of Taurus Fund, LLC?
The managers were Taurus Management, LLC, and Scott Barnett.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, I'm assuming the government is asking what the document notes as the manager, correct?
The court said, that is your question?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor.
The court said, as to what the document says?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes.
The court said, go ahead.
By Mr. Ferguson.
And what's the address listed for those managers?
6628 Sky Point Drive, Suite 129, 1071, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89131.
Same address for both?
Correct.
All right. Now, Ms. Buck, who was Scott Barnett?
He's the manager of, listed on this document for Taurus Fund, LLC. He was also a point of contact that I was authorized to receive invoices from and pay them accordingly.
What did you understand his connection to be, if any, to the family?
I don't know. He was there, he set up their security systems. And he was handling a lot of the invoices and sending them to me and making sure they were paid. I don't know if he was a friend or an employee. I assumed he was an independent contractor.
You mentioned security. Were there significant security expenses that you helped pay?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Ms. Loftus, if we could go to GX Buck 1233. All right. What's this document, Ms. Buck?
This is the filed Articles of Organization for Taurus Management, LLC.
And that's one of the managers of Taurus Fund, LLC?
Correct.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, so we can do this the long way or we can do it more efficiently. The objection is overruled.
All right. And if we could just, Ms. Buck, quickly, where was Taurus Management, LLC Incorporated?
New Mexico.
Ms. Schrofa said, the objection is asked and answered now.
Mr. Ferguson said, I did not ask that.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could scroll to page 2. All right. And when was Taurus Management, LLC Incorporated?
December 15, 2021.
And how close was that to the incorporation of Taurus Fund, LLC?
It was the day before.
Mr. Ferguson said, we can take it down, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck, what, if anything, did Aaron Mitchell tell you about the reasons for this structure?
He said the client was very concerned about privacy and security and they took great length to protect their privacy and stay secure.
And what was your reaction to that?
Given the price point of the property, I assumed it was a celebrity or high net worth individual. So I wasn't surprised by the level of security.
Now, Ms. Buck, approximately when was the closing date?
On or around December 17, 2021.
And you said it was a cash deal, correct?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, move on.
Who or what entity sent the cash to buy the property?
At the time I don't know because I wasn't the settlement agent. It was sent to the title company.
And did you later learn?
I later learned it was from Hamilton.
To your understanding, what was Hamilton?
My understanding, it was like a parent company to Taurus Fund, since it was a newly formed entity.
And where did that understanding of yours come from?
From conversations with Aaron Mitchell.
Now, Ms. Buck, after the closing, what work did you do?
After the closing, I paid invoices on behalf of Taurus Fund for various vendors and contractors.
And who was your primary contact for that work?
Initially, it was Aaron Mitchell.
And what, if anything, did Mitchell say about why you were asked to do that work?
Because Taurus Fund was a newly formed entity, they haven't yet opened their bank accounts. And they had renovations and work being done right after closing, so it was a short-term assignment.
And could you just describe for the jury, what your work entailed?
I would receive non-disclosure agreements and invoices to review. I would be told if they were installment contracts, what to pay on them, who to pay. I would verify the wire instructions, and I would send out wires from my trust account.
And around when did you start this work?
Immediately after closing.
And until when, approximately, did you continue making these payments?
Until February of 2023.
Generally speaking, Ms. Buck, how frequently were you making payments?
Frequently. Sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes daily. It was sometimes every few days. It was pretty constant.
What sorts of things were you paying for?
Construction and renovation, furnishings, artwork, furniture.
Overall, what was the approximate total amount you handled for payment?
Approximately $18 million.
And the money that you paid to vendors, where was that money coming to your trust account from?
It was coming from Hamilton.
Do you know where Hamilton got that money from?
I do not.
Did you think you were doing anything wrong when making these payments?
No.
Now, Ms. Buck, we looked at the engagement letter earlier. Did you have an engagement letter for this payment work?
It was a less formal engagement letter. It was through an email, but yes, it was documented.
Mr. Ferguson said, Ms. Loftus, if we could publish GX Buck 1295. And if we could go to page 2. And scroll down slightly. That's good. Is this the email, Ms. Buck?
Yes, it is.
All right. And who did you send this email to?
Aaron Mitchell.
All right. And I'll ask you to please read the first paragraph.
As you know, the purchase of the above referenced transaction has closed. You, as authorized person for the Taurus Fund, LLC, have requested my continued representation in connection with the purchase, delivery and coordination of various furnishings and interaction with various companies/vendors in connection therewith. As Taurus Fund, LLC is a new entity and in process of opening bank accounts. I will utilize my trust account to receive funds from or on behalf of Taurus Fund, LLC to pay various vendors. I will also negotiate non-disclosure agreements with the vendors to ensure protection of the buyer and its information. The expectation is that there is approximately 5 vendors that I will be coordinating with, and Scott Barnett is the authorized person/manager of Taurus Fund, LLC, who will give me directions and written authorization to make payments.
Now just to pause there, Ms. Buck, when you said towards the middle there that Taurus Fund, LLC is in the process of opening bank accounts, where did you get that information from?
That information was from Aaron Mitchell and Scott Barnett.
And you referenced non-disclosure agreements. How common are those in your practice?
In a typical real estate transaction, residential, not as standard, in commercial. They're a little more standard. Usually bigger transactions.
Did you think there was anything wrong with using non-disclosure agreements?
No.
All right. And I won't make you read it, Ms. Buck, but what was your fee for this work initially?
$15,000.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could scroll up, please. I'm sorry. Scroll back down. What did Aaron Mitchell say in response?
Confirmed on behalf of Taurus.
Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could scroll back up. And keep scrolling up. Great. All right. Now what's the date of this top email, Ms. Buck?
February 21st, 2022.
And about how long after the initial email is this email?
Approximately 2 months.
And who did you send this email to?
Aaron Mitchell.
All right. And Ms. Buck, I'll ask you to please read the first 3 paragraphs.
I hope you are well. As previously discussed, my representation has surpassed our initial agreement, and you wanted me to present my fees for previous work performed, an ongoing monthly fee if the same arrangement is to continue. You may recall, my representation was to cover payments to approximately 5 vendors, handling approximately $2 million in client funds, and conclude in about a month. I had 1 point of contact at the time, Scott, not including you. My fee was a flat fee of $15,000. Such arrangement was confirmed on December 21, 2021. To date, over $10 million of client funds have been wired to my account. Over 55 payments have been made to approximately 23 vendors. I have 3 points of contact, Scott, Sean, and Gladys, again not including you. As you know, wire instructions are verified verbally, NDAs, COIs and invoices are reviewed by me. I also discuss priorities of payments with the points of contact, review monies remaining, and any other questions they may have.
Now, Ms. Buck, the increase you reference, $10 million and from 5 vendors to 23. Was that discussed with you beforehand, or did they just happen?
They happened.
What was your reaction to that?
I wasn't happy. That wasn't what the arrangement was. But I was trying to help a client continue on with their renovations, so I didn't want to get in the way.
And again, Ms. Buck, just briefly, what was your ongoing fee for this work going forward?
$15,000.
And how often would you get $15,000?
Monthly. It was earned.
All right. Now in what you read, you listed 3 points of contact. You referenced Scott. Which Scott is that?
Scott Barnett.
The one we discussed earlier?
Yes.
All right. And Sean, who is Sean?
Sean Jing was also a point of contact that I was authorized to receive invoices from and pay them accordingly.
Did you ever meet him in person?
No.
Did you talk to him on the phone?
Quite frequently.
And what kinds of things did you talk about?
He would send me invoices, he'd check on payments, he would prioritize payments.
Do you know what company, if any, he worked for formally?
I don't know formally.
Do you know what his title was?
Ms. Strofa said. Objection. Title to what?
The court said, you may answer.
He was, I think, the project manager, or the house manager. He seemed to be one at the Crocker mansion, so he knew what was getting done.
Did you have an understanding of who he worked for?
Ms. Strofa said. Objection.
He worked.
The court said, overruled. If you know who he worked for, you may say.
He worked for Taurus Fund. I'm just not sure in what capacity.
And you also mentioned another point of contact, Gladys. Who was Gladys?
Gladys Chow was another authorized person who sent me invoices.
Did you ever meet her in person?
I did not.
Did you talk to her on the phone?
I did.
What kinds of things did you discuss?
She seemed to be in charge of the higher-end furnishings and artwork. So she would prioritize what needed to be paid and when.
And do you know what her title was?
I think she was a project manager too.
Ms. Strofa said. Objection to think. Either she knows or doesn't know.
The court said, so if you'll just state what you know as opposed to guessing.
The witness said, understood. On some emails I saw her title as project manager. By Mr. Ferguson.
And sort of formally, do you know what company she worked for?
No.
As a practical matter, who did you understand she worked for?
She was an agent of Taurus Fund. I don't know if she had her own company or, I don't know the extent.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Now, Ms. Loftus, if we could publish GX Buck 822. And Ms. Buck, you mentioned earlier that there were security-related expenses. What sorts of security-related expenses do you recall?
There was a security system put in place. There was, I'm sure, cameras type of things. Anyone on the property that was coming on the property signed what's called a non-disclosure agreement. That was for their protection of the buyer. There was a lot of invoices. I'm sure there was a lot of security invoices as well.
And in terms of dollar amount, were they significant?
I believe so.
All right. Now, Ms. Buck, let me direct your attention to this. Mr. Ferguson said, and if we could zoom on the bottom email, please, Ms. Loftus. All right. Now, Ms. Buck, could you please read this email you wrote?
Hi Scott, please send me a copy of the signed NDA and $100,000 invoice from the above referenced vendor. In addition, please provide authorization to wire $100,000 to this vendor.
All right. And what's the date of this email, Ms. Buck?
December 22, 2021.
And how soon into your payment work was this email?
In the first week.
And in the to line, in the header section, who is this email to?
frontsite1@outlook.com.
And whose email is that?
Scott Barnett.
And who is copied?
I'm sorry?
Who's copied on the email?
Oh, I'm sorry. Aaron Mitchell.
All right. Now your email body said the above referenced vendor. What's the subject line of the email?
Taurus payment to Labarbera Custom Homes, LLC.
And what was Labarbera Custom Homes, LLC?
It's a construction company.
Were you in contact with anyone there?
A person by the name of Vinny Labarbera.
And who is Vinny Labarbera?
He was the owner.
And what, if anything, did he do with respect to the Crocker mansion?
He did a lot of construction work. He also had a monthly, I believe, maintenance contract with Taurus Fund.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. And if we could zoom out. And then if we could just zoom on the top email. Thank you. Ms. Loftus. What did Scott Barnett write in reply?
Attached are the documents you requested and I am authorizing the payment to the vendor.
All right. And are there attachments to that email?
Yes, there are.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down. We can go to page 7. All right. Now, Ms. Buck, at the top here, can you read the very top line at the top center?
Labarbera Custom Homes, LLC.
And then directing you a little bit downward, what's the date of this document?
December 18th, 2021.
And then could you please read the line beneath that?
Taurus Fund SP 675, Ramapo Valley Road, MOA. Construction Agreement.
And could you read the sentence beneath that?
Labarbera Custom Homes, LLC to provide the following at the above referenced premises.
Mr. Ferguson said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll slightly to see both pages. All right. And Ms. Buck. I want to focus you underneath where it says demolition work to be provided in the following
areas. Can you read the text beneath that?
Second level ladies master wing, third level sons wing. Third level daughters wing. Second level bedroom bath converted to laundry.
Ms. Buck, what's a wing?
It's a section of the house. It may be how the house was built. It has different wings that they branch into.
Where it says master wing, what do you understand the master wing to be?
Master is typically the primary heads of the households, spouses, husband and wife.
And son wing, what do you understand that to refer to?
Usually one of the children gets a wing.
Mr. Ferguson said, all right. Let's scroll down slightly, Ms. Loftus, please. All right. And then focusing you on the bold text daughters wing level 3. Can you just read the first line of text beneath that?
Denoted walls to be removed.
Mr. Ferguson said, and we can zoom out, Ms. Loftus. And if we could scroll down again. And focusing on ladies wing level 2, can you read the first 3 lines of text?
Denoted openings to be closed. Denoted openings formed as per plan. Marked walls to be removed.
And what do you understand ladies wing to mean?
The wife of the husband and wife duo, the primaries.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Ferguson.
And where it says denoted openings formed as per plan. Do you recall reviewing a plan for that?
I did not see the architectural plans.
And if we could just focusing you on son's wing level 3. Could you read the first line of text beneath that?
Existing theater platforms dividing wall and carpeting to be removed.
And let's go to page 10. Focusing you on the bottom, Ms. Buck. What was the total contract price for this work?
$488,300.
Is this contract signed?
This is not.
Ms. Strofa said, objection. It's not a contract.
Is this document signed?
The court said, go ahead.
It is not.
Let's go to GX Buck 168. Did you later receive a signed copy, Ms. Buck?
I did.
And you can just scroll to page 5, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck, is this copy signed?
It is.
Do you know who signed on behalf of Taurus Fund, LLC?
I believe that's Scott Barnett's.
Ms. Strofa said, objection to believe. Either she knows or she doesn't know.
The court said, just testify as to what you know.
Scott Barnett sent the signed contract to me.
And, Ms. Loftus, we can go to GX Buck 851. Let's actually start with page 3 if we could zoom in on the bottom email, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck. What's the date of this email?
January 6, 2022.
And about how long had you been doing the payment work at this point?
Less than a month.
Who is this email from?
Gladys Chow.
And what is her email address?
GladysC@hchtech.com.
Do you know what HCHK Tech is?
I do not.
Could you please read the first 2 lines of the email?
Attached are the documents for the rugs purchase. There are 2 separate invoices. $300K attachment 1, plus $200K $250K attachment 2 and the COI and NDA are attached as well.
By the way, Ms. Buck, what is a COI?
Certificate of Insurance.
What's a certificate of insurance?
They show that, in this instance, that the vendor has insurance cause they're carrying high-end furnishing, so we want to see they're insured in case something happens.
And we can zoom out, Ms. Loftus. We can scroll up to page 2. If we can zoom on that email, yes. Please. Ms. Buck, could you please read your response?
Hi, Gladys. I need fine rugs to sign off that we can directly pay the owner. They can write on their invoice or send email directing me to pay Nahid Botesison. I also need wire instructions for Nahid. Scott, please authorize both payments for rugs.
Why did you ask Scott to authorize payments?
In the beginning with Taurus, Aaron and Scott were only the authorized representatives at this point. Gladys wasn't authorized. So I needed someone to tell me to pay them.
Can we zoom in on the response? What did Gladys say in response?
Attached is the email directing you to pay Nahid for the 2 Chinese rugs, and the wire info of Nahid is attached too. Thank you.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, I think it says, Hi Amy, comma, and then goes to the body of the email.
The court said, Did you say you wanted to pause?
Mr. Ferguson said, No, I didn't want to interrupt you.
The court said, If you would just state what it says.
The witness said, You want me to reread it?
The court said yes.
Hi Amy, attached is the email directing you to pay the Nahid for the 2 Chinese rugs. And the wire info of Nahid is attached too. Thank you. Regards.
If we can zoom out and scroll up. If we could zoom on Ms. Buck's email. Ms. Buck. In your response there's an image there. What is that image?
That image is from my Excel spreadsheet.
What was that Excel spreadsheet tracking?
The payments made on behalf of Taurus Fund.
If we could zoom out and scroll up. Then what does Gladys say in response?
Please hold on with DND. The client wants to double confirm the items. Regards.
Who did you understand the client to refer to?
The family.
If we could zoom out. Let's actually go to GX Buck 532. And if we could scroll down slightly. Ms. Buck. Could you please read Gladys' initial email here?
Hi Amy, attached please find document for furniture purchase from DND Gallery. Thank you, regards.
And let's go up. What did you write back in response?
Hi Scott, please authorize payment if acceptable.
And if we could go to the next email. What did Gladys say in response?
Hi Amy, here is the final invoice and the certificate of authenticity for a total of 41 items. The principal has approved and authorized the payment. Please process the payment today. Thank you so much, Gladys.
When she said the principal has approved and authorized the payment. Who did you understand the principal to be?
Someone in the family.
If we could zoom out, Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down. And there's attachments to this email, right? Ms. Buck?
Yes.
And could you read the description here, Ms. Buck?
A very rare and unusual antique French Louis, I don't remember my Roman numerals. 16 gilt bronze mounted buhl and silvered bronze rectangular form desk/center table of exceptional craftsmanship embellished with fine detail and adorned with gilt bronze figural mask 19th century.
That's fine. Thank you. If we could just keep scrolling through. Thank you, Ms. Loftus. We can stop there. Ms. Loftus, if we can go to GX Buck 709. Ms. Buck, focusing you on the top here. Can you read the text in the top right corner?
Flat rate elite.
And what does it say in large text to the left of that?
Your move plan.
And focusing you sort of above that in smaller text, what's the name listed?
Taurus Fund, LLC.
And what's the date on this document?
January 18, 2022.
And about how soon after the closing is that?
It's about a month.
And beneath the header, could you read the large text there what it says?
I'm sorry. I don't know where you're referring.
Do you see your upcoming elite move there?
Yes.
Focusing you beneath that where it says where, do you see that?
I do.
Could you please read the origin address?
373, Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut, 06831, flights 2.5.
Do you know that address in Greenwich, Connecticut?
I do not.
Did anyone tell you what it was?
No.
Did anyone tell you who lived there?
No.
Could you please read the destination address?
675, Ramapo Valley Road, Mahwah, New Jersey, 07431, flights 2.0.
And what's at that address?
That's the Crocker Mansion address.
And when was this move scheduled for, focusing you beneath that?
Packing date Thursday, January 20th, 2022.
And when were the move-in dates?
Friday, January 21st, 2022, and Friday, January 28th, 2022.
And, Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom out slightly. Beneath what we just looked at, Ms. Buck. What was the price for this move?
$118,000.
If we could scroll to page 2 and if we can blow up the first few lines and make it larger. Ms. Buck. In the top left it says furniture, could you read on the left the first 2 lines there?
1 extra large cabinet in living room, 20 by 25 by 2 master bedroom.
And what's the line beneath that?
1 gold orb 15 by 1 by 1 master bedroom, 1 cabinet storage extra large dining room.
Ms. Loftus, we can zoom out. We could go to page 7, if we could zoom on the signature. Now, Ms. Buck. You see it says e-sign at the top?
Yes.
What name is listed in large text there?
Scott Barnett.
What does it say in the sign by row?
Signed by Scott Barnett.
What's the email address signed by email?
GladysC@hchtech.com.
And to your understanding who used that email?
Gladys Chow.
Did Scott Barnett use that email?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
He didn't use that email with me.
Let's go to GX Buck 1204, if we can zoom in on the text. Ms. Buck. Is this one of the invoices you received for your payment work?
Yes.
Did you pay this invoice?
I did.
What does it say in the top left?
Merit Plumbing.
And what's the date of this invoice focusing you on the top right?
January 24th, 2022.
What was the job location for this invoice?
373, Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut.
How does that address compare with the origin address that we just looked at?
It's the same.
So beneath the address, what does it say after bill to?
Sean.
Who did you understand Sean to refer to?
Sean Jing.
Scrolling down or looking at the bottom, what was the total amount due on this invoice?
$400.
Let's go to Government Exhibit Buck 375. Who's this email from?
Gladys Chow.
What's the date on this email?
January 27th, 2022.
And just as a reference, about how long after the closing was this?
A little over a month.
And who's this email to?
It's to me and Scott Barnett.
What is Scott Barnett's email?
scottb@gsnys.com.
Do you know what GSNYUS is?
I do not.
What's the subject line of this email?
Hason's mattress purchase.
What's Hason's if you know?
A mattress company.
Could you please read Gladys' email, the body?
Hi, Amy. Please find attached the client has approved already. Thanks.
Who did you understand the client to refer to?
The family.
Are there attachments to this email?
There are.
If we could scroll down to page 3, Ms. Loftus. Who is this sales order book from?
This is from Hason's.
And, Ms. Loftus, maybe we can blow up the top portion to make it easier to read. What's listed under Bill 2?
Taurus Fund, LLC.
And is that the Las Vegas address?
Yes.
And what's listed under Ship 2?
675, Ramapo Valley Road, MOA.
Is that the Crocker Mansion address?
It is.
If we could scroll down, Ms. Loftus, if we can blow up the remainder of it starting with that chart. Ms. Buck, focusing you first on rows 1 and 2, what are those items?
Mattress and top mattress.
What color is listed for both of those items?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection as to relevance. What color is the mattress?
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Blue.
And how much is the mattress?
$36,590.
How much is the top mattress?
$5,590.
Focusing you on rows 3 and 4, what are those items?
Mattress and top mattress.
What color are those items?
White.
And what's the price of the mattress?
$36,210.
And the top mattress?
$5,840.
And then focusing you on row 5, what's that item?
Accessories.
And in the bold, what does it say there?
Mattress cover.
And how many, what's the quantity? How many pieces were there?
2.
And just focusing on the total cost, how much was this in total?
The invoice or the cover?
The bold total after the discount?
$80,829.21.
Let's go to GX Buck 522. If we could go to page 3, scroll up slightly. And we can zoom in on the bottom one. Ms. Buck, is this the initial email we were just looking at?
Yes.
We could scroll up now. What did you write back?
Hi, Scott, please approve the purchase. Gladys advises that the delivery will be made to her New York office address, so NDA is not necessary. Thanks.
If we could scroll up. Ms. Buck. What was your understanding of why an NDA would not be needed if it was going to the New York office?
If the vendor is not going to be on site at the Crocker Mansion, there's no need for NDA.
You wrote back again, can you read your next email?
Apologies. It looks like you have a signed NDA and COI. Good on my end. Gladys. I assume there is another request that is being delivered to your office. Thanks.
Can you read Gladys' response like the first line?
Correct. Mattress are still going to NJ.
The bottom line of her response?
Only the piano is going to New York office first. We'll send that invoice over as soon as I received it. Thanks.
Do you recall the address for the New York office, Ms. Buck?
I do not.
Ms. Loftus, if we could show GX Buck 69 or publish, please. While we're waiting, Ms. Buck. Did you receive an invoice for a piano?
I did.
If we could zoom in on the top half. In the top center, who's this bill of sale from?
Faust Harrison Pianos.
And on the top right, what's the date?
January 27th, 2022.
The sold to, can you read the top line there?
Taurus Fund, LLC.
And can you read the full ship to?
Gladys Chow, 3 Columbus Circle 20th floor, New York, New York, 10019.
And do you know what was at that address, Ms. Buck?
I do not.
And could you read the first line of the description, please?
Bosendorfer 185 VC Porsche number 49539 with custom bench.
Focusing you on the bottom right, what was the total due?
$140,938.69.
Ms. Loftus, let's go now to GX Buck 428. What's the date of this email, Ms. Buck?
February 17, 2022.
And focusing you on the from line, what's the email address in the from line?
675 payable at protonmail.com.
What's that email address?
It's an email address I received emails from Gladys Chow and Sean Jing.
Focusing on the bottom email, who signed this email?
Gladys.
What did she list beneath that?
Project Manager.
Can you read just the first line underneath purchase? Could you just read 1 and 2, please?
Hason's mattress $36,596.90. Cedric DuPont shipping $38,651.80.
Focusing you on the header where it says attachments. Could you please read the name of the first attachments, Ms. Buck?
Hason's invoice daughter February 17, 22. PDF.
Who did you understand daughter to refer to?
The daughter, the family.
If we can go to page 2, please. Ms. Buck, just quickly here focusing you on rows 1 and 2. What's the color indicated there?
It's abbreviated, seen to be silver blue.
And we can zoom out. What's the total cost?
$36,596.90.
If we can go to page 6 now, Ms. Loftus. We can zoom on the top half, just make it larger. Now. The shipper origin, do you see that, Ms. Buck?
Yes.
Can you read the second line?
Cedric DuPont Antiques.
Let's actually pull up GX Buck 77. Actually, Ms. Loftus, if we could do GX Buck 77 and GX Buck 80. Now, Ms. Buck. In both of these, what is the large text in the center?
Cedric DuPont Antiques.
Focus on the document on the right, can you read the description there?
A stunning and large-scale Italian 19th century wrought iron lantern.
Let's go to GX Buck 194, please. And we can zoom in on that. Now, Ms. Buck. Focusing you on the top left there when it says date, what's the date?
February 2, 2022.
And then moving over to the top right, what's the customer name?
Sean Jing.
Back on the left under bill to, what are the first 2 lines?
Taurus Funds LLC, Sean Jing.
In the email address listed at the bottom there, what's that email address?
newj6909 at protonmail.com.
Whose email address is that?
Sean Jing.
The ship to, can you read the first line there?
Sean Jing.
Is the Crocker Mansion's address beneath that?
Yes, it is.
Now, if we could just actually, I think you can see it. Can you read the description under order items?
Samsung Q900 series, QN98 Q900 RBF, 98 inches, QLED Smart TV 8K new.
To the right of that, what's the unit price?
$59,969.
And what's the unit price for the freight?
$2,818.54.
Let's go to GX Buck 218, please. Ms. Buck, is this an invoice you received as part of your work?
Yes.
What's the name of the company on the top left?
Luca Incorporated.
And beneath that on the right, what's the date?
February 20th, 2022.
And could you read the second line from the top under description?
Painting and fixing Boss door.
Could you read the second one from the bottom?
Supplying and installing 2 towel racks for Boss bathroom.
Who did you understand Boss to be?
The head of the family.
Did you ever meet anyone named Boss?
No.
Let's go to page 2. Just quickly, can you read the second line from the top?
Installation 2 closet rods in Madam's laundry room.
Let's go to GX Buck 391, please. Ms. Buck, focusing you on the top, who's this email from?
Gladys Chow.
What's the date?
March 29, 2022.
And if we could zoom out. Just focusing on the bottom email to focus you at the bottom there, Ms. Buck. Can you read what it says after to?
Golden Spring, New York Ltd.
Do you know what Golden Spring, New York Ltd is?
I do not.
You can go to GX Buck 1275, please. Who sent this email to you, Ms. Buck?
Gladys.
What's the date of this email?
May 23, 2022.
And I'll ask you just to read the first line of the second paragraph.
Attached, please find the invoice wire instruction and COI for a Muniel bookcase.
In the same paragraph, can you read the last line of that paragraph?
The client has approved it already.
Who did you understand the client to be?
The family.
If we could, Ms. Buck, could you read one more sentence, the next sentence there is no?
There is no certificate of authenticity since it is not an antique item and is a custom-made piece for the client.
If we could scroll down to page 3 for the client. Under description, Ms. Buck. Can you read just that first row right there?
Brass bookcase.
If we can zoom on the top left, please, page 2. It should be the same exhibit 1275, the top left. What does it say after attention?
Leanne Lionel at gfashion.com.
Do you know what G-Fashion is?
I do not.
Do you know who Leanne is?
I do not.
Can you read what it says after reference?
Brass bookcase to match brass pantry.
And focusing on the bottom line, where was this being sent?
675, Ramapo Valley Road, Moa, New York.
Is that the Crocker Mansion?
Yes.
Let's go to GX Buck 1279, if we could scroll down, and we can zoom on the bottom email. Ms. Buck. Who is Ilona Musial?
She was another authorized person that sent me invoices to pay.
What is the date of this email that she sent you?
June 2, 2022.
Can you read her message, please?
Hello, Amy. It's Ilona Musial for the house manager for Crocker Mansion. I am sending you some bills to pay. If this is not a problem. From now on I will be sending all invoices or bills directly to you, skipping Scott. Thank you, Ilona Musial.
If we can zoom out and keep going up. Let's just go back up to page 1. If we could zoom on the bottom email. Ms. Buck, just for context in this part of the email chain. Who are you emailing with?
Erin Mitchell.
Can you read your email to Erin Mitchell?
Okay. She said she's taking the place of Scott, so I wasn't sure. She sent me 2 bills for Rockland Electric that are already paid. I can just let her know they are paid and paid the other ones. She knows we need sign NDA, COA, etc. for each contract/vendor.
If we could zoom out of that email and scroll to the top email. Can you just read Erin Mitchell's first line response?
I haven't spoken to her. Just found out they hired a house manager.
When you said her, who did you understand her to be?
Ilona Musial.
When he said found out they just hired a house manager, who did you understand the they to refer to?
The family.
Let's go to GX Buck 1274. If we can just zoom on the bottom email, please. Who's this email from?
Ilona Musial.
If you can read the first 2 lines of her email to you.
Hello, Amy. Thank you for getting back to me. I spoke with Scott and Yvette. And from now on I would be sending payments to you to process them.
Do you know who Yvette is?
I do not.
Did you ever meet her?
No.
Did you ever speak with her directly?
Not that I recall.
Do you know what company or companies she worked for?
Ms. Strofa said, I think she testified she doesn't know who Yvette is.
The court said, sustained.
Let's go to GX Buck 1277. If we can zoom on the top email, please. Who's this email from?
Ilona Musial.
Who is it to?
Me, Amy Buck.
And who is copied?
Scott Barnett and Sean Jing.
I'll ask you if you could just read the last sentence in the long paragraph there.
We would need to hear from you daily if the payments went out because of the family requirement to pay all vendors on time and specially for priority transfers.
Who did you understand the family to refer to?
The family behind Taurus Fund.
If we could go to GX Buck 1282. Ms. Buck, who did you understand Wayne Chow to be?
I saw that name on invoices, so I assumed he was part of the family.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the assumption.
The court said, don't say what you assume. Just say what you know.
I saw the name Chow on various invoices.
And if we could zoom on the bottom email. Who is this email from?
Wayne Max Chow.
Could you please read just the main question there?
Would you please give me a heads up when the balance of the fund is getting close to 200K?
And what did you understand him to be referring to by balance of the fund?
The balance of money in my trust account.
How did you respond?
Absolutely not a problem.
Did you ever meet Wayne Chow in person?
No.
Did you ever have a phone call with him?
No.
What sort of interaction did you have with him?
He would be copied on some emails or he sent emails that I was copied on. So only through emails I saw his name.
Let's go to GX Buck 1294. Is this another invoice you received as part of your work?
Yes.
If we could zoom on the top left, please. Now, can you read what's written in the bottom left?
Chow Residence, 675, Ramapo Valley Road, Moa, New Jersey, 07430.
Did you see Chow Residence on other invoices you received as well?
I did.
And then just focusing on the top right there, what does it say after customer number?
Chow.
You can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck, in the witness binder you reviewed, did you select which documents went in that witness binder?
I did not.
Did you receive, fair to say, many invoices?
Yes.
And are all of them in that witness binder?
No.
Now, Ms. Buck, did there come a time when you received a subpoena in connection with your work?
Yes.
Who was the subpoena from?
The SEC.
And approximately when did you receive it?
In May of 2022.
After receiving that subpoena, what did you do?
I freaked out.
Why did you freak out?
I'm not a litigator. I don't go to court. Subpoenas are very new for me.
After freaking out, what did you do next?
I immediately sent a copy to Aaron Mitchell and called him.
And what did you discuss with Aaron Mitchell?
That I received a subpoena and next steps.
What did he say to you?
He was much calmer than me and said this is the cost of doing business and they would hire counsel and we'd move forward.
When he said, this is the cost of doing business, what did you understand that to mean?
That they either weren't surprised about the subpoena or had other ones. I don't really know.
What, if anything, did he tell you about the family in connection with that call?
He said that the government doesn't like the client cause they're part of the Federalist Party of China and the subpoena didn't seem unexpected.
Had you ever heard of the Federalist Party of China?
No.
Do you follow Chinese politics?
No.
Do you follow U.S. China foreign relations?
I try not to.
Do you know what the Federalist Party of China is?
No.
When he said the government doesn't like them, do you have any independent knowledge of whether that's true?
I do not.
After that conversation, Ms. Buck, what did you do in response to the subpoena?
Counsel was hired and then I was communicating with counsel to respond to the subpoena.
And without getting into any discussions with your counsel, did your counsel ultimately respond to the subpoena on your behalf?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Buck, did there come a time when the funds in your trust account were running low and not being refilled?
Yes.
Approximately when was that?
The first time was July of 2022.
And what, if anything, did you do as a result?
Most of the contractors had my cell phone number. So when they weren't getting paid, I received a lot of calls. So I was reaching out to mostly Aaron to find out if the fund was going to be replenished so I could pay the various contractors.
What happened after that, after you reached out to Aaron?
I don't remember the days. Sometime later in July I did receive another wire.
Approximately how much was that?
5 million.
Did that 5 million eventually run out?
It did.
And what happened after that?
Around October, November of 2022, the funds were low again. I was trying to find out if my representation was concluding so I can turn over the records and whatever information was necessary for the next person. I wasn't being told any information. I was just getting the calls from the contractors of who wasn't getting paid. Eventually I did connect with Aaron. And he told me to reach out to someone else to find out about the funds and if they were going to be authorized to be paid through my trust account.
And where was that someone else located?
The UK.
Ms. Loftus, if we could publish GX Buck 1283. If we can zoom in on the text. Who is this invite from? Ms. Buck?
David Fallon.
And what's the domain of his email address?
Hamilton IM.
And who is this invite to?
Priya Patel, William J.E., myself and Aaron Mitchell.
And what's the date of this invite?
December 1st, 2022.
And what's the subject?
Buck ESQ LLC Taurus call.
And, Ms. Buck, did you have a call around this time?
We did.
Who was on the call?
I was on the call, Priya Patel. There were other individuals there male. I just don't know if Mr. Fallon and Mr. J.E. were on that call.
Who did you understand David Fallon to be?
He was the person at Hamilton that authorized my payments and my monthly fee.
And who did you understand William J.E. to be?
I don't know. I know he was part of Hamilton.
What did you discuss on this call?
We discussed a couple of things. One of them was my counsel legal fee for responding to the subpoena. They wanted me to run a title search on the property. It's called a rundown. And it tells you if there's any liens that have been placed on the property. And also if I was going to continue in my role or if it was concluding and then transition to someone else.
Did they ask anything about the SEC subpoena?
They also ask in connection with the legal fee from my counsel. They ask for a copy of the subpoena and our response.
Now, around this time, Ms. Buck, what was your understanding of whether some bills were still being paid?
I got the impression from how the contractors were calling me that some payments were being paid from someone else and some weren't, just from how they were calling me and telling me what was paid and what wasn't. Because I knew what I was paying and not paying.
Do you know where they were being paid from?
Sean Jing was making payments.
Did you ever speak with him about that?
I did.
Tell us about that conversation.
I asked him if they set up bank accounts to move forward with payments. And he didn't really answer me. He just said he was taking care of it.
Ultimately, were you able to pay the invoices that Taurus had due?
At that time, no.
Let's go to actually, Ms. Loftus, if we could publish GX Buck 1290. Ms. Buck, what is this exhibit?
This is a text message between me and Aaron Mitchell.
And are your text in green or in gray?
Mine are in green.
If we could scroll down. The January 26th message, what year is that? January 26th.
2024.
What did you write to Aaron Mitchell?
Did you get this?
And what did you send him a screenshot of?
A notice of a motion in connection with a bankruptcy matter.
If we could zoom on that again. Ms. Buck, focusing you on the caption where it says in re. Can you read what it says after in re?
Ho Wan Kwok, et al.
Did you know who Ho Wan Kwok was?
I do not.
Do you know who Luke Despins is?
I do not.
Did you know about the bankruptcy before receiving this document?
I did.
If we could zoom out and scroll down. What did Aaron Mitchell say? Actually, why don't I read Aaron Mitchell's responses and you can read yours? Yes, about 1,000 people got it.
That sounds amazing.
Some people are fighting. So if they win, we win.
Gotcha. Do I need counsel for this too?
Up to you, but I'm not getting counsel or responding.
Gotcha.
Any further response to this with Aaron Mitchell?
No.
After receiving without getting into any discussion with counsel, what did you do?
I responded to the subpoena.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck, we discussed a number of people, correct?
Yes.
And we discussed a few entities in connection with your work, right?
Yes.
Did any of your contacts ever bring up the entity G/Club?
No.
Mr. Ferguson said, "May I have a moment, Your Honor?" Ms. Buck, what's a HUD-1 statement?
A HUD-1 is used for closings. It's where you see all the numbers for disbursement in a real estate transaction.
Mr. Ferguson said, "Thank you." Nothing further.
The court said, cross-examination.
Cross-examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Good morning, Ms. Buck.
Good morning.
Ms. Buck, how long have you been a lawyer?
23 years.
And you said you were not a litigator, correct?
I am not.
I understand. Your primary practice was in real estate, correct?
It is.
And it has always been in real estate, is that right?
A majority of it.
And is it fair to say that your practice was initially New Jersey? Then you moved to Florida and you moved back to New Jersey? Do I have the chronology generally correct?
I'm only licensed in New Jersey and New York. Personally, we did Florida once or twice.
And it didn't quite work out, right?
Yeah.
You moved back to New Jersey?
I did.
And unfortunately, I'm assuming you moved back to New Jersey during COVID, correct?
Yes.
And when you moved back during COVID, at that time you did not have a physical office space, is that right?
I have an office address that I use through a friend of mine, but I maintain a home office.
Can you help me with that last sentence again?
I maintain a home office. I don't use that address for clients for safety. But I have an office address where mail goes and I can go to use for a conference room if I need to.
So you use a friend's office address to get your mail, correct?
Correct.
And then you work out of your home?
Correct.
Which is, what, 90% of us did during COVID, correct?
Yes.
Do you also have some kind of virtual office, or do you use your friend's office space?
Just my friends.
And you testified that your practice is based in New Jersey?
Yes.
And you talked about, is there a county named Darlington in New Jersey?
I don't think so.
How about do you know, is your practice county-based or just statewide?
Statewide.
And you testified on direct, right, that you got a referral from someone named Dara Lowell, correct?
Correct.
And did you know Dara from before?
I met her through mutual friends.
And your connection was with her? Was that many years before she sent you this referral?
No, it's when we moved to Chester, New Jersey.
So you reconnected with her, is that right?
No, we both live in Chester, so we met through mutual friends.
And when you met through mutual friends, let me withdraw that. She's also a lawyer, right?
Correct.
And she's the one who sent you the referral, correct?
Correct.
And she sent you the referral in her capacity as an attorney, is that right?
Yeah.
Or did she just send it to you because you guys had become friends?
As an attorney.
And when she sent you that referral, she said she was referring, you said, a family to you, is that right? That's what you said on direct?
Yeah, she indicated they were important to her. They were like family.
And I'm assuming that you had a nice back and forth with her when she did the introduction, correct?
I'm sure we spoke for a few minutes.
Did you ask her who's this family?
At the time I probably didn't because I know I'll see it on the contract.
So you didn't ask her how she knew the family, correct?
I did not.
You didn't ask her how long she knew the family, correct?
I did not.
And you already told me that you didn't ask the name of the family, correct?
Correct.
And you became aware that the referral was about a specific property, correct?
Yes.
And what name did you know that property by, just so I can refer to it the same way for you?
Crocker Mansion.
So you were aware that the property was Crocker Mansion, right?
Yes.
And you were also aware that the Crocker Mansion had been on the market for at least a decade, correct?
I didn't know that actually.
Did you know how long it had been on the market?
I didn't look.
It's okay if you didn't look. My question was, if you were aware in any other way how long it had been on the market?
I was aware through one of my conversations with Aaron Mitchell that it must have been a while because there was a price reduction.
There was a huge price reduction, correct?
Correct.
The initial price was $39 million?
That's what I saw on Zillow.
And then it had dropped all the way down to $26 million, correct?
Yes.
And according to you, there was a lot of back and forth on the price of the sale of the property?
I wasn't involved at that point. It seemed like there was negotiation between the parties.
I know you weren't involved. By the time you got involved, the sale was complete?
The price was set, yes.
And you were aware, though, that there was some urgency on the part of the seller to the sale, correct?
Correct.
And you in fact told the government that you were aware of this urgency. But that the urgency came from the seller, right?
Both parties seemed to be very urgent.
You didn't say that when you met with Mr. Ferguson, correct? You told him that the urgency was coming from the seller, right? Do you recall that?
I don't recall the difference between both parties and the seller.
Let me show you 3507-004 and see if that refreshes your recollection.
Okay.
It's just only for the witness, the court, and the parties, please. Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, may I just have a minute? Does that refresh your recollection that it was the seller's attorney that was contacting you a lot?
In regard to the deposit.
Right. And it was never the buyer's attorney that was contacting you with a rush, correct?
I was the buyer's attorney.
I understand, but nobody from the buyer side contacted with a rush, right?
In connection with the deposit, no.
And the times that the seller's attorney was contacting you, do you recall how many times was it a her or a him?
It was a he.
And how often did he contact you?
I don't recall, several.
Several times, right?
I believe so, yes.
You can take that down. Now, Ms. Buck. It's fair to say that you have spoken with do you recall also? Let me go back for a minute. Do you recall also telling the government that there was a closing deadline before Christmas? And it was the seller driving that urgency. Do you recall the timing of it being before Christmas?
Yes.
And you were also aware, were you not, given the work you were doing, that the property itself was old? Correct?
I didn't know the age of the estate, but through the invoices seemed like it needed a lot of work.
And you told that to Mr. Ferguson, correct, when you met with him?
Yes.
And you told him it was your impression that the property was such that a lot of contractors would be needed to work on it. Correct?
Yes.
And that a lot of contractors would need to be paid, correct?
Initially, I was only paying a few. As it went on, I paid many.
And the same is true for the vendors, right?
Correct.
Initially there were a few, then you paid a lot?
Yes.
Now, you were asked a lot of questions repeatedly about what you understood the family to mean, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, Objection.
The court said, overruled.
There is a time when you learned that the purchaser was going to be an SP, right?
That's the name that was on the contract.
Could you tell us, please, the full name of the contract as you recall it?
Taurus Fund SP.
And when you saw Taurus Fund SP, what did you think SP stood for?
In my world immediately comes to mind sole proprietorship.
When you saw that, did it ring a bell for you that New Jersey had a different rule and it wouldn't be allowed?
Immediately, and I could confirm with the title company.
Right, because that's what you do for a living, right? Did you then tell Mr. Mitchell that that would not work in New Jersey?
Yes.
Do you know if Mr. Mitchell was versed in these laws of real estate?
I don't know his background.
And that's because you're really fully familiar with the wife, right?
I wasn't familiar with their work at all, because they've referred other matters to me. I knew their practice was primarily commercial litigation, and they did some residential real estate. But I don't know how complex or not.
Was it your perception that it was a husband and wife with a separate practice for each? Or that they both worked on the same matters?
They made one firm. I don't know if they divvied up their practice.
You don't know one was a criminal lawyer and the other was a real estate lawyer?
I do not.
And do you recall when you spoke to Aaron Mitchell in telling you and discussing with you the topic of the new federal state of China?
I thought he told me it was Federalist Party of China, but I don't remember the exact name.
But putting aside the exactness of the name, you do recall sitting here today, Mr. Mitchell, talking to you about that, correct?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that it was not an area of your interest, so you didn't follow up with them?
It was not.
And it's still not an area of your interest, right?
No.
There came a time when you started really just working with Mr. Mitchell on this matter, correct?
Yes, after my initial conversation with Dara, we did not discuss Taurus Fund.
And when you were speaking with Mr. Mitchell, did he talk to you about NDA?
He did from the beginning.
And just, I'm allowed to lead, but that is a non-disclosure agreement, correct?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that he gave you a written-out non-disclosure agreement for you to use?
Yes, he gave me a form.
Like a template, right?
Yes.
And did you use that template?
I reviewed it, but the signed NDAs were sent to me, so I didn't typically deal with them. I had copies of them from the various vendors or contractors.
So if a vendor was going to do a drop-off at the property, it would not be your responsibility to ensure that a NDA was signed. You checked to see if it was signed?
I asked if they have one. Somebody else's responsibility to gather the information.
And when you first started working with this property, what was the month and the year? I'm sorry. I've forgotten.
December of 2021.
In December of 2021, at that point had Mr. Mitchell talked to you about the need for security on the property?
When we initially spoke, since I didn't have every company or entity has people. So you usually have the name. When I asked for the name, so I knew who natural person was behind the client. I didn't get it. And he said they were very concerned about security and privacy. So from the get-go, I assumed. Like I said, it was a celebrity or high net worth individual, and it was very important that they feel safe, be safe. And their information kept as non-public as possible.
And when by he, I mean Mr. Mitchell, talked to you about the new federal state of China, you didn't ask him if that had anything to do with the property, correct?
That came up when I received the first subpoena.
No, I'm not asking about the subpoena.
I'm sorry. Can you ask it again?
Sure. When Mr. Mitchell first mentioned the new federal state of China, you didn't ask if that property was going to be used vis-a-vis the new federal state of China, right?
I did not.
When you were talking about the security of the property, you understood Mr. Mitchell to be talking about the physical security of the property, correct?
Correct.
And also the physical security of the property would include the periphery of the property, right?
Yes.
And the security within the property, right?
Yes.
Ms. Buck, did you actually ever visit the property?
I did not.
You didn't go see what it looked like, right?
I would have loved a tour, but I didn't. No one gave me one.
So when you were testifying about all of these invoices, you did not know how the shipment was done at the physical location, right? You're just moving the paper along. Is that fair?
Correct. I wasn't there to see the property.
Now, I'm going to come back to Mr. Barnett. But Mr. Barnett was also one of the people who also discussed physical safety?
Yes.
Is it your testimony that you did not know Mr. Barnett well, or did you know him well?
I don't know him at all.
Do you know if he was ex-NYPD or not?
He told me in one of our conversation he was a retired cop.
Did he talk about being a cop a lot?
No.
Did he tell you what his role was at the facility?
He said it chartered the security system. And he was my initial contact for all the invoices until he got too busy.
Did he talk to you about what the security system was?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to hearsay.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No.
He didn't tell you. Okay, let me move to a little bit of a different point. Okay, you remember the government showing you a few invoices involving, and I have trouble with this word, La Barbiera Custom Homes, correct?
Yes.
And there was a point person for that company named Vinny, right?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you were aware that Vinny had been at that property for many years before the sale to Taurus S. LLP?
I don't know if that's the case or not.
Do you know if the same La Barbiera Custom House had done work on the property before?
Before when?
Before you came on the scene?
I don't know one way or the other.
Did you ever speak to this person named Vinny?
Yes.
Did he ever tell you that he had worked on that property for many years?
He did not mention it.
Did he speak to you in English?
Yes.
He didn't speak Mandarin to you, right?
I don't speak Mandarin.
And did you physically ever meet him?
No.
Did you ever Zoom with him?
No.
Now, do you recall discussing with him renovations that would be needed on the property, including the renovations in the garage on the property?
I received invoices from him for the renovations. And he was also in the beginning receiving payment on behalf of his subcontractors until I was paying them directly.
So is it fair to say that when you got an invoice, right? You didn't evaluate. You didn't make any evaluation of the invoice itself, right?
The evaluation I did. If it was an installment contract and there were several payments to make sure I was paying what was supposed to be paid and it wasn't duplicative to make sure the work was completed before I paid it. But that was the extent of my review.
If Vinny double billed, you wouldn't check that, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, speculation.
Ms. Schrofa said, I'm asking if she would check that.
The court said, so the question would be, did you check his bills?
Did you check his bills?
I did.
The court said, so it's now 11:30 and we're going to take our break. Members of the jury, remember that you're not allowed to talk amongst yourselves about the case. Don't permit anyone to discuss it in your presence. Don't read, listen or watch anything from any source that touches on the subject matter of this case.
The law clerk said, jury exiting.
The court said, Ms. Buck, you can step out. Don't discuss your testimony.
Jury not present.
The court said, you may be seated. Is there anything before we reconvene at noon?
Mr. Ferguson said, not from the government.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, just one matter. The defense has given the government the defense exhibits it seeks to introduce through Ms. Buck. They are the same documents that were produced pursuant to the Buck LLC account. To the extent the government wants to stipulate to the admittance, it will certainly make the cross go faster.
Mr. Ferguson said, we have not been told about any exhibits that they're seeking to introduce through Ms. Buck.
The court said, so you'll work it out during the break.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
Recess.